Doug, I understand that at Highline, you were able to establish 80% as pay parity at Highline. Could you share with us how you did that and what led to successfully organizing part-time faculty to fight for that?
I want to first say that we did not achieve 80% pay parity, just to be clear. What we established was a pathway to getting to that 80%, and that involved pay increases that started, as Kate mentioned earlier. Actually, we weren't all here when Kate mentioned that, but at 64% and moved us to 68% with a definitive pathway to 70, and also language in the contract that tied future adjunct pay moving towards 80% to the college revenue, which is a significant part of our contract. We were dealing with a major budget shortfall. It was a very, very tight situation for us, but what we were able to win was language that tied the success of the college to an adjunct pathway to 80%. And that was significant for us, considering we came in there with this budget shortfall in the middle of a pandemic, trying to bargain for 80% for adjuncts that were getting paid 64, which was absolutely atrocious. It's just exploitation, pure and simple, right? And that was our situation when we came in. So as far as what led to that, I think it's really about how those guiding principles translated into results, right? And I think for adjuncts, as far as faculty goes, right, we're talking about the most marginalized faculty, the most alienated faculty from a variety of different processes. And as an adjunct for basically a decade, I could speak to that in very personal ways as to what that does to you, right? But if your bargaining approach is an organizing approach, and your bargaining approach understands that power comes from people feeling invested in the process, that's a major step. And I think because our bargaining strategy and our organizing strategy, which are intimately linked, understood that power comes from people feeling invested, we understood that adjuncts are the folks that often feel the least invested in this kind of stuff. So that is why the bargaining strategy has to speak directly to that. And for us, and I realized there were a lot of qualifications in the chat about what open bargaining looked like for us, and that's all true. Thank you, James, and everybody else that chimed in. But for us, opening it was what we needed to do because of our concrete situations and our challenges. And that opening allowed a lot of adjuncts to be engaged and created space for them to engage and organize in ways that they hadn't before. And it was really important to feel invested and have a sense of ownership over what's happening around you. When you feel disempowered, you need to feel empowered. And it can't be like a paternalistic thing where people just reach out and say, we're going to bargain for you. No, we're going to bargain with you. And that participation becomes meaningful when you can see it in real time. That made a difference for us with our needs at the time. And we looked at things differently. We said, it's not just about how many members we have when we organize, it's about how active they are too. It's the quality, not just the quantity. Of course, we always want to have as many members as we can, but having active members who feel like they're part of this and have a stake in it, that's a different thing. That's a kind of power that doesn't fit in an equation. And that's something that we really pushed for. And we got pushed to do also. And that was from a lot of really solid organizing efforts from the adjuncts at HC. And another thing I think is something a friend of mine, David Parsons, who used to be the president of UAW, always said. He said, sometimes management can be the best organizer. And I always used to laugh, what does that mean? But what he meant was sometimes the crazy abusive stuff that they can do doesn't always get seen. And people don't necessarily see what it is that's happening or how it came to be what it was. And in a scenario that's more transparent, that stuff plays out and people get to see exactly why it is they're feeling what they're feeling. And that has a powerful effect on people's desire to get involved. That's huge, right? Understanding that bargaining is always political, right? And knowing that every move you make, you're thinking about, even at the negotiating table, what's best for organizing our members and building solidarity all the time, always having that awareness. Creating the networking and interaction spaces that open bargaining in the way that we did it provided, because we did it in person as well. It allowed adjuncts to come and watch the process, be around people in a way that made them feel a little bit more protected, but also to voice their concerns in different kinds of ways in these scenarios was a huge deal. And that all helped to build more trust, network people, get them to see each other, at each other's side. All this meant something really significant to, I think, everybody, full-time and part-time involved. And the other thing is that we always have trouble with in a lot of these institutions when we're fighting the labor struggle is the lines are blurred. Management's always trying to blur the lines, make everything into, what's good for us is good for you. And this kind of work, the way I think we went about it, made clear where the lines were drawn, and that sometimes we intersect, but this common interest talk is not what it sounds like, right? And I think when those things get exposed in the way they got exposed because of the approach we took, people started to get more of a sense of where they stood and how they had to look out for each other, hold the line, like the title of the presentation, the conference says. That became more real when you can see where the line is, because you're gonna hold no line if you can't see where it is. You got to see where it is, and this kind of bargaining helped us do that. And the last thing I think is really important to remember for us is the use of equity rhetoric in these kinds of negotiations can be really tricky. And a lot of times it can be weaponized by management in really sophisticated ways. And that was something that we had to contend with and understand where do adjuncts fit into this mission about equity? Because if you're proposing that you're going to pay 64% on one side of your mouth and talk about equity on the other, you're trying to convince me that you're going to achieve equity through exploitation. And that's not happening. That math doesn't add up anywhere, right? So understanding how it is we fit into that discussion and how it is we can put institutions to the test, you really want to talk about equity, 64%. I don't know how that translates to equity in anybody's universe, right? So all this stuff these principles translated into success because of the way I think we imagined bargaining to be a part of how it is we build power and how it is we arrive at the table together. And yes, as Annette said, of course, we can't have people, participating in the middle of the table because we need strategy to win, but people are still participating before we get there. And their voices emerge at that table in a different kind of way. And I know that we all understand the importance of strategy, but we also understand the importance of participation and building solidarity and power.
Wow, I'm going to take that one. You can't get to equity through exploitation.